afternoon. This is Mayor Nick Helmer. Holly Allgauer present, by the way. Hello, Holly. Okay, we need the chairperson to call the meeting to order, but we can have a member do that. That's either me or you, Karen. Is there anyone there?
Hi, Mayor. Holly and Jason are here.
All right, Holly, you call the meeting to order, presumably, and then ask for a quorum. Make sure you have a quorum.
Okay, give me 1 second here. I'm just...
Hi, everyone. Jason's here, too.
Okay. Yeah, we'll take a roll call after you two, after Holly straightens out.
I want to get to my... Okay. Is everyone on the call?
Yeah, take the sound down a little bit.
Okay.
Hang on 1 second. Well, we won't know until you call for a quorum. First of all, you call the meeting to order, the date, the time.
Okay, this is Holly Allgauer, sir, and I'm calling the meeting to order on Wednesday, March 25th at 5 p.m. And, I'm sorry?
For the tourism board, right?
For the tourism board special meeting, yes.
Prospect Heights.
Prospect Heights.
All right, let me caution all of you, if you're not speaking, put your phone on mute, otherwise we're going to get a lot of feedback. So right now, everybody should be on mute except Holly, and then we'll open up as we go. Holly, go ahead. You're looking for a quorum.
Right, I'm looking for a quorum, so we'll take a roll call. So Holly Allgauer, sir.
Jason Hager.
Karen Schulteis.
Nick Helmer. Is there anyone else on the call?
Is Cameron there?
Who's Cameron?
Gotham.
Is there anyone else there? They have to now unmute their phone if they're there.
Bill Kearns is here, but I'm not a member of the board.
Dan Peterson.
All right.
Officer Cole.
Who else?
Terry Griffin is here.
Rich
Not on the
Tibbetts.
board.
Rich Tibbetts. None of you are directors though, right? Not
No.
the last. All right, so you're there as a guest. All right, Holly, now if you guys would, let's see what the next step is. Holly, what do you do next?
So I'm just looking at the agenda, so I'm going with that. So next on the agenda, we have the minutes to be approved for the March 6th, 2020 regular Tourism District Board meeting. Look for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion from Mr. Hager.
I'll second.
We have a second from?
From Karen.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? All right, motion carried.
All right. So the next thing is new business. And
Can we tone that down a little? Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
okay. So new business, consideration of a one-time amendment to City Council Ordinance 0-12-22, allow hotels to use the remaining funds available in the beautification fund. So,
Is that a motion?
right?
All right, let me see if everybody, all the council members, the tourism board members understand. Repeat the new business motion A.
Consideration of a one-time amendment to City Council Ordinance 0-12-22 to allow hotels to use the remaining funds available in the beautification fund.
All right. There's a typo on there that should be scratched, the 250,000
It was.
not on there.
We sent an amended one out.
Well, I know, but it's on the one I have. So, all
Enough
right,
of the
so-
amended agenda.
All right, so we have a motion.
Well,
and-
we need a motion, would you like to make a motion for that? Is that what you? is that
Well,
what-
I don't know, is it a motion or is it something that we need to discuss prior to that, or?
What, you need a motion and then a second, and then we can discuss.
Okay, so a motion, I'll motion.
Okay, and a second?
Jason seconds.
Okay, and now you can discuss.
Okay. So, I think I heard Sherry on the phone. And Sherry, I know Jason did not get a chance to connect with you, so I'm wondering if you could just kind of go over what we've discussed previously so that we can so we're all on the same page as far as where that fund, where that fund is at right now?
So clarification on this beautification fund, what is it that we're looking for?
Well, go ahead, Holly, explain it, please.
Well, so there's been a lot of different numbers floating around. I've been misinformed a couple of times, but I think part of it is just communication of not asking for the right thing, or the right category, or however you want to call it. So
Right.
I guess if you could help us understand and make sure that everyone on the call understands the funds that are still remaining in that beautification fund.
So there is no beautification fund. The beautification expenses that we're talking about would be according to our budget. And according to the agreement, the beautification line expense is supposed to get 15% of the net revenues going forward. The city is supposed to budget 15% in the beautification expense in our budgets according to that agreement. So this discussion came up in terms of that expense line, in that if there were to be a loan to the tourism district, repayments back to the city could come as a portion of that expense line, so that instead of allocating 15% to beautification, we could maybe split it or break it up somehow, and maybe say beautification, for an example, could get 7.5, and loan repayment could get 7.5. That money isn't in hand right now. That money is budgeted for future periods, which would be fiscal 21. So money comes into fiscal 21 and expense goes out of fiscal 21. And those beautification expenses, instead of being 15% budgeted, they would be budgeted lower to give some amount left in order to pay back any amounts that were advanced by the city. That's the nature of what that discussion was.
And Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong, that without taking anything out of it, that budget is around $95,000, is that right?
Right. If you go back to the budget that we approved at our last meeting, I think it's about a budget of $90,000 was the 15% for fiscal 21. Yes.
So that money, question from Nick Helmer, that money, well, keep going with what you're doing. We'll save the questions for everyone later.
So that $90,000 is budgeted beautification expenses for fiscal 21. I don't know that it would be reasonable to say that would be zero, because we're going to need to do some, watering and various costs that Mark might be able to help give us some indication of what those would be. But the total amount for beautification is, according to the agreement, at 15% of the budget would be the $90,000.
And
Yeah, so Sherry, it's Jason, by the way. So I'm looking at the kind of cash activity report that you put together You
Yep.
know which document I'm talking about on that? Kind of where we
Yes.
sit?
Yes.
Okay. The lighting project that we talked about,
Okay.
study, I think we estimated that lighting project to be, what was it, 200,000, somewhere in there? Where is that, where are those funds? I was trying to find those funds on your cash report.
So the lighting project was going to utilize the remaining amount of money left over from the tourism's capital improvement transfer about a year and a half ago of $300,000. So when that,
Cut you off, Sherry. That
Oh.
capital improvement project also paid for Winkleman, correct?
correct, Apple Drive and Winkleman, yes.
That did not
So
come
the-
out of tourism funds. That was the capital city fund, correct? Transfer?
It came out of, Tourism District approved the $300 capital improvement project. And so 300,000 was budgeted for that project. Actual cash money out of the tourism bank account did not transfer. It's now showing up as a liability on the balance sheet for the tourism fund. So there is no actual cash involved. The city advanced the expenses. Well, they didn't advance it. They paid the bills for those two street projects. And after the projects were completed, there's about $106,000 left of the $300,000 that was approved by the tourism board. So the $100,000 is what we were estimating to be the lighting project. Again, Mark, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was about $100,000. And that was where the funding would come from.
Sure, if I could, this is Mark Roscoe, just to clarify what Sherry said, the lighting project was a total of projected around 125. That's what was presented to council a few weeks back. And that's, it was 15,000 for plans, which was approved. And then once it gets, if it were to get underway, there was another 5,000 for permits and around 105 to actually build it out. So the 15,000 is all that's been approved so far on that lighting program.
I think so Jason and I spoke yesterday, Sherry, after you and I talked, and I think where we're confused is that we were under the impression that the repair, like the street work and everything was coming from the village. It wasn't coming from the city. It was not coming from the tourism district, and that if there was any funds that were moved over, it was as like to lend, right? Like there's confusion.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm stuck a little bit, Sherry, and I don't want to turn this into like a review of your cash document, because that's obviously not what we're talking about here, but I was under the assumption that the Winkleman Drive project and Apple Drive project was paid for by the city, like complete through a capital fund, not tied to tourism funds. I wasn't aware that we're paying that back. I wasn't under that impression. So if I missed something, then that's, my fault. But when Holly was kind of walking it through with me and I was looking at your document, I'm like, wait a second, how is this coming out of tourism? I was under the impression that was being 100% paid for by a city capital improvement account, because when I remember when we had our first meeting, it was kind of a surprise. It was like, hey, by the way, we're fixing Winkleman. And we were all kind of like, wow, that's awesome. We're very excited about that. And I think I even asked in the meeting, if we go back to the notes, I was like, you're telling me we don't have to pay anything for that. There's no levy on the hotel. There's no, taxes, no nothing. And you were like, no, it's just we're doing it, and the city's moving it from a capital reserve account, and, we're excited about it. So the lighting, I 100% get. I know that. That was a Holly and Jason and Tourism District conversation. That is 100% on the tourism group, which obviously is discussion right now, but I was just kind of pulled back a little bit on the Winkleman thing, and it could be me. It could be me.
Well, but I think the question comes up about this is because we thought the funding was there for the lighting, and you're saying it's not due to this capital expenditure, which we thought was coming from the city.
Yeah.
So that's
So
where
if you
there's,
back up from, before those projects were approved, at one of our meetings, we had approved a $300,000 transfer from the tourism district fund into the capital improvement fund. That $300,000 was earmarked to be used for those two projects. So once that transfer was approved, the money would then be coming from the tourism district, which was currently part of the fund balance. The money was there, the equity in the fund was there to cover those costs. And so those two projects were included in the city's capital improvement plan, and they were earmarked to be funded by the tourism fund.
This is Karen. We actually did vote on that, and maybe it wasn't understood, but I know we had, that was brought up in the meetings, that it was going to be coming from tourism.
Okay, so are those monies gone? Those monies are moved and gone and paid for Winkleman?
So the actual cash money was not able to be drawn from the tourism bank account because they didn't have sufficient funds to make that transfer. So it's still sitting on the balance sheet of the tourism fund as a liability. So that's not money yet transferred. It's intended to be paid back to the city as the funds become available in the cash account. But as of right now, they're showing a $300,000 liability to the improvement fund. So that wasn't a cash transaction where money was pulled from the bank account.
Got it. I see. I understand now. So we're running in the negative.
mm,
So, Holly and I are together, so we're just kind of looking at each other. So we're operating right now in the negative on the tourism fund, which I guess is kind of a little bit of a surprise since we haven't really discussed that in our meetings. But what you're telling us is we're running. What you're telling us is we're running in the red.
In the red, meaning cash minus liabilities equals equity. You still have a positive equity, but you do have some liabilities.
Well, and I think, from Holly and my perspective, obviously, the discussion we're having right now is relative to the state of the industry. And, the goal in these conversations is to talk about if there is an opportunity or an option for some level of assistance to the two largest hotels you have in the market, based on what's happening with the economy. So, and I will first say I really appreciate all the conversation that's happening, with the mayor and council and all the discussions you guys are having. But just so everyone on the call knows, I think these discussions are not meant to call out anything specific individual-wise. It's really what you've got is your two largest hotels trying to look at opportunities for us to partner together in a very, difficult situation. So that's, I think, what the goal in this conversation is. It's not to make you recreate the wheel, Sherry. It's just, it's really us trying to say, hey, are there opportunities for us to talk about anything here? And from what I'm hearing or seeing, that is somewhat limited. Is that how you're viewing that, Sherry, or?
If we're looking to spend money that the tourism fund has collected over the years, according to this projection, there will be depleted. The current $400,000 bank balance is already earmarked to be depleted by the mid-July. So there isn't any more actual dollars to be able to distribute at this point from the tourism's bank account.
and that's with the assumption that there's no hotel tax paid in, correct?
Correct. From now forward, that was conservative assumption. That's why it's put down at the bottom of that report. I didn't account for any more deposits coming in up through till July. Correct.
Oh, we're not either.
That's what I'm saying.
And you can tell, we already talked about
That's what I'm saying. So we're in the same room, and we don't always see each other. So
Yeah.
we're just saying that, you know, we think, and I think I said this to you the other day, Sherry, you know,
Yep.
at the earliest June, latest July, assuming that, you know, things start to rebound as we think they will, that we would begin paying our taxes back in at that point, and then we would take that deferment and split that up over time. I mean, at this rate, that deferment is not going to be very much, given the current situation. So I don't think it'll be much time for us to have to pay that back. So that being said, I guess what we're looking for, and obviously need to have some type of, I guess, resolution, considering that my letter that was sent to council had misinformation in it from the information I was provided. And so I think they're going to certainly be looking for what is available, what can they help with if they're willing to help, and what that looks like. So I guess my question is I know there was some talk about the 2021 beautification, you know, those funds, and I know we have on the agenda B and C of talking about, you know, I guess this is all encompassing really, tabling the tourism lighting project, which we had already agreed upon and voted on, and then, you know, looking at what we can do from a reducing landscape contract. I mean, as much as it pains me, because it's something that we've worked on for the last couple years, in providing a more beautiful thoroughfare for our guests, you know, who travel through Wheeling, and it looks so beautiful, and then they get to Prospect Heights and it was pretty drab for a while. To go backwards is certainly not what we would hope for, but at this, you know, given time, you know, we are in a position that we need to, you know, hold on to whatever funding we can that would be afforded to us. So if that means that we have to go back to what it was prior to, where, you know, we don't have any plantings, we don't have Christmas lights, we don't do those things, then if that's what we need to do for a year in order to get us by here, then we're certainly wanting to talk about that.
And just to dovetail off of Holly's conversation, I know there's a lot of people listening. I know there's a lot of media talk and a lot of things. Everyone's aware of the economy and everyone's aware of the businesses and where things sit. You know, from a hotel perspective, just from my hotel, I'm not speaking on behalf of Holly, but, you know, our reservation mix right now, the cancellations that are coming through are starting to really affect May and June. So as we're looking at this, and as Holly and I are looking at this, you know, this is really a April, May, June discussion that we're having. That's really what we're trying to do, is try and look at what the next 3 months look like for the largest hotels you have in the market. And I'm losing significant share already in June because people are worried. They're canceling. Now, I expect that if things improve economically, it'll shift itself back.
Yeah.
And like Holly said, you know, our goal, and I really appreciate what the mayor did and everything with the stepping up on, you know, the taxes for 2021. You know, our goal is not to defer all of that. Our goal is to get paying back into this room tax fund as quickly as possible, get back to a normal level of operation at both of our hotels as quickly as possible. But what we're talking about here is really how to sustain your two largest hotels in this market for the next 60 to 90 days. And that's really what, I mean, Holly, add if you have anything on your end, but that's really what we're looking at this point. And when I say sustain, I really need everyone to understand, we're talking about 2 rooms a day, 1 room a day at 300 room hotels.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and please understand, I'm not saying hotels are any different than other businesses. I'm not looking for, you know, special treatment, but what I need everyone to understand is you have 0 people staying at both of these hotels right now, and the outlook is for the next, you know, 60 to 90 days from what I'm seeing right now. So I hope that's not the case. I really do. I hope it reverses itself sooner than later. But what you have is Holly and I really trying to say, how can we get through this together? You know, and I think as soon as we all can get back into paying this room tax into this fund, we will absolutely do that. The last thing I want to do is defer this till 2021. I don't want to do that, and I don't think, I can kind of see the nods in the room with me. I don't think, the Hilton wants to do that either. We want to get back paying in as quickly as we can and get back to normal operations. But for the next 90 days, we are trying to find a sustainability plan that keeps the doors of these hotels open, at best, and as, in some sort of option. And again, I say that with all due respect to every business out there, because every business is experiencing this. But, your two largest hotels in town are seriously talking about how we're going to make this work. So I know that was a little bit of a rant, but that's my 2 cents on kind of why we're in this discussion and why we're talking about options on the table. So.
Well, this is Nick. Are you both suggesting that, let's say the landscaping amount, which I remember to be 70,000 in that range, that was approved?
That was 55. And yet, what do you mean it was approved?
Well, the group here approved that. There's bids out for bids on doing the work that the group approved.
Right, prior to all of this happening. So that's why we're saying,
yes, Holly, everything is prior to what the heck is going on now. But the point is, my question is rather, are you looking to retract that? And I have to ask Sherry, I'm not even sure how that's done. It's approved or the contracts have not been signed or due to be signed today, I think. And Mark is on the line, he can verify that. But let's say, what's 55,000 gonna do? Well, maybe if it helps and it can be done, I said before, we had grass there before that was barely mowed by anybody, including the state, who probably logically should be the ones that are should have been taking care of that area. So Mark's group really, did it a wonderful job, especially at Christmas time, as you remember. And money was allocated to continue the 3-tier approach for this coming year, for spring, summer, and fall. I believe I'm correct on that. But to do nothing is probably not the right thing. To leave some money in that account, if in fact it can be canceled or turned over or whatever, then maybe that's something to think about. You can't get petunias and marigolds and all that stuff. May not be the worst thing, but I think mowing the grass is something that's it needs to be done, and maybe the city can help with that. So I invite Mark to jump in and give me some recommendations here.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We put out bids for the tourism landscaping. We had 2 come back in. Landscape Concepts, who's been doing it for the last 3 years, had the lowest bid. Their bid for the entire package of what they do came in at $47,387, and that was to be presented to council for final approval. So they came in below what our expectations were, and we're happy with the work that they do. But in regards to that, there is more expense than just that. In the tourism area on beautification, we do have power expense and water expense. There's repairs that aren't on that contract to the irrigation system in the spring after the state plows have knocked some heads off and things. So there's additional funds in there that are required. Landscape Concepts, their current bid can be accepted by council, and they've agreed to break it down for us, and we can select items to remove if the board and council agree. An example would be we could cancel our summer plantings for this season, which is about 15,000 right off the top. So they're an option that they've given us in working that they stay our provider.
So they stay our provider to what extent, I guess? So let's say let's go to the barest of bones. What does that look like?
The barest of bones, with Landscape Concepts being our provider, we would still be, with their expenses, probably around 11 grand for regular maintenance, and the irrigation system needs to stay in place and running. We pay Illinois American Water for the service based on a contract we have with them, so it's not like we can just cancel it and renew it at a later date. And we also have a contract for the power because there was a lot of infrastructure had to be put in for the power and the water. So we'd go with the minimum of Landscape Concepts mowing and maintaining, doing a spring cleanup, and then keep the water system running. We'd probably be at about 20 grand a year for those expenses. And then everything goes up from there. With the option that they've given us to sign a contract with them for their bid, but giving the city options of not selecting items, help us out. We don't have to commit to fall planting at this time. We can wait a few months. We don't have to commit to holiday lighting. But down the road, as things improve, we can if we elect to. So that's a couple things brewing with the landscaping end of it. Does that help answer that?
Sort of. I guess at the end of the day, and I know that we're, there's another call scheduled at 6 o'clock, so obviously time is of the essence for everyone at the moment. But I guess, Mayor, maybe we'll ask you at this point, or Sherry, I don't know. I mean, I guess the question is what can the city do to help us? What do you feel comfortable that we could present to council that, would hopefully, they would understand the situation and that this isn't, something we'll be looking to do, routinely. This is a one-time need. So what the accumulation of different areas, whether it's landscaping, whether it's the beautification of, the lighting project, whatever that might be, that we defer in order to receive the funds now for us to sustain ourselves over the next 90 days. I think it's really what we need to focus on. And we need some guidance from you all because we're not,
Yeah, I agree with how Holly framed it up. I think we're looking for help. What we're doing is we're looking for help. You've got, like I said, I just got done kind of telling you guys, we're at a point where decisions are going to have to be made soon on both hotels, and, I think that realistically we can both say to you that there's discussion about, will they close, and how long will they close, and, every business I know is talking about that, but, I think Holly, in all frankness, I think Holly and I and the hotels have done everything we can to work and help and support the city in many different ways. And this is our ask to you to say, are there things the city can do for us to help sustain us for the next 90 days?
Right, and I also just want to reiterate one thing that was in the letter I wrote to council is this isn't just about the Hilton and the Crown Plaza. This is also about a good number of Prospect Heights residents that currently are not employed because we can't keep them on staff. And, we want to try and bring back as many of them as we can, and we hope to do so with some of this funding as well and be able to rotate some of them through. So that's just another piece of it that we, want to make sure that everybody's taking into consideration as well, that it isn't just for the hotels, it is also for a good number of people that live in the city.
Yeah, and I'll just say it again, we don't want to drag this out. We really don't. We're not looking to drag this out to 2021. We want to get the businesses back in line, back where they are. This is just a 90-day sustainability plan to get us where we need to be, or to help us get where we need to be to get through this. We're not looking to defer everything until 2021. I appreciate that offer, but I think both of us in the room are not looking to do that.
Well, if I could, as I heard the numbers from Mark and you, I mean, if a $47,000 contract and some odds and ends, if we cut it down so that some of the money can be used for what you need and the rest of the money for odds and ends of beautification, the bottom line number isn't very much. Let's say we can knock off $35,000. That gives you guys $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 each. Does that really help?
But I think what we were talking about, or what was in question, is the 95,000 that would be part of the budget for the 2021 beautification projects.
So then if we look at that number, which is funds that we haven't yet received, Holly, we're talking about advancing money from the city, basically. We would advance those monies and then be repaid over the next year. So I think that's really the question is, how much is available, how much would you need, and how much is the city willing to advance once
Right.
we get to that
So-
point? Because we're obviously out of cash based on the cash activity that I presented, so there's no actual dollars that we can send out the door to help in this instance. And so it would be advanced from the city funds, no matter what the number is or what amount we come up with. That would be up to the council in terms of identifying if they're willing to do so.
And Sherry, are you talking about that kind of outside of the tourism fund, like just, city-type funding program for the next 90 days? Would that one even involve tourism, or are you saying that would still run through the tourism fund?
No, it would be, well, there's no cash in the tourism fund, so the only other place to get actual money would be from the city's own funds. I mean, even if we reduce the landscaping contract down by 35,000, we're at a negative 31 already, so we're not really talking about much help there to give you guys some support. Any more dollars since
Has there been any conversation with council yet in regards to this, and has anyone made any of their opinions or suggestions?
Well,
I have not talked to anyone on council.
I tried to think of some things that Holly, you and I talked about. And the first one, of course, I thought possibly there'd be a loan of a decent amount based on future repayment, of course. And that hit the wall pretty flat by the lawyers and by one, two, maybe three council members. They thought I was crazy. So it'll all be presented tonight, but that may not be a positive answer tonight, and it would take another meeting, for example, to get things started, if in fact we can do some of this.
Holly, though, I found out today, I do want to correct something I told you yesterday, and Peter, you can jump in here. The meeting limit is not 10 people, so I was wrong when I told you that that was the audience maximum. Peter,
No
right?
worries.
I think that I communicated with Peter earlier today, and Karen, you may know as well that there's more people allowed in the council meeting than just the elected officials and aldermen.
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So what would you like me to present to council tonight? And with Sherry's help, because frankly, I understand the numbers, but I'm not sure how we got this far, which I don't like. But anyway, it is what it is, and we have to work with it. So, when I say, well, what's $15,000 going to do for you? How much, other than $1 million, would be of help?
Well, when we started this conversation originally, we were under the impression at one point that there was $200,000 funded somewhere. That has now dwindled down to pretty much nothing. So we've received many different directions from many different people with many different numbers. And I think our hope in some of the numbers that we crunched and was around that, you know, I know that my letter said 250, but that was because I was told that was what was available. Obviously, that's not the case. So I think the hope was somewhere around $200,000 for the 6 hotels. And Jason and I talked about it being paid out very similar to the grant disbursement as far as percentages. That's the hope. I don't know if that's realistic, unrealistic, ridiculous, I have no idea. But that's kind of what we need in order to get through these 90 days. Kind of, we figured out what our numbers would be based off of that somewhat, you know, rough numbers. That's really, would you agree? That's what we talked about.
Well, just to back up for a moment, the numbers that you referred to, you know, I always worry about what allocated funds are and what unallocated funds are. I didn't realize how deep we were into allocated funds that are already spoken for, leaving less than zero in anyone's account.
Mr. Mayor,
that makes 3 of us.
Yeah, that makes all of us. I think we feel the same way. So this conversation started out with us thinking one thing, and that has led us to a completely different path at the end of this conversation as we sit 10 minutes prior to city council. So we feel the exact same way.
Well, I think, Holly, if you can remain on the line for the city council meeting, we only have 3 items going. If you could firm up that number, whatever it is, we need X number, we need $300,000, $200,000, $150,000 for 6 hotels to stay alive. If you can come up with that, I think maybe we'll have some people that understand business, and nobody understands COVID-19, so I can't ask them to understand that. But one thing we can understand is when you laid off, Hallie, I believe 60 people on your from your production group, with some of them, maybe quite a few of them being Prospect Heights residents.
That number is more like 100, not 60.
Yeah, and Crown Plaza was 92. So Holly was 100, I'm 92. There's 192 just in our 2 hotels that are not working right now.
Wow. You know, someone will say, well, wait a minute, the fund coming back after today's bill signing at the federal level is going to improve things quite a bit. Well, I don't know that. I don't know that because, Holly, you thought at one time only the small hotels were going to get some help.
It's still that way, Mayor. The dollars that they're saying would not apply to Jason nor myself.
Well, you know, they're not that great at explaining things either. I've watched every single broadcast, including the one at 4:30, and then had to get back on this call. But in the last 2 broadcasts, they simply said hotels. They didn't say small. They didn't say large. They did say that large and small businesses would be supported. So,
right, and we've already gone to the grant request site on the Illinois coronavirus.com, whatever that website is, and we've already looked at the criteria, and unfortunately our hotels will not qualify.
All right, if you could possibly jot down some figures, short but sweet. We laid off 190 people. Jason, you're welcome to attend this too. It's a public meeting.
Thank you.
He will.
Yeah, and we are basically out of business, and could receive notice from corporate that we are going to close you permanently. That's maybe stretching it, maybe a little, too much, but, that's a possibility. If this thing lasts 3 months, you're not gonna be in business, maybe forever, from what I understand, from what I can hear. If you stick with us on the phone, with the council meeting, which as you know, as you said, or Jason said in 10 minutes or so, where are they on the agenda?
It's a different dial-in for that.
Yeah, that's okay, we can dial back in.
Okay, and it's on the new business. It's an item C.
So that's after the warrants or before the warrants?
That's before the warrants.
Oh, that's good, at least. There's not much, there's only, as I said, 4 issues on the agenda, so we're not gonna tie up the night for you. And I think, you've gotta be direct spokeswoman, whoever, and then share the explanations. This is not just, one person crying out in the night. This is, 2 that are here that have the biggest stake in this thing, and 4 others that will definitely go out of business. There's no question about that in my mind. And we've been highly dependent, and I think you could make that point. The hotels have supported us in a big way for a lot of years, and that's the absolute truth. So,
Right.
And I'm sure Sherry's going to be there. So maybe there's some more to say about numbers and figures. But right now, if you look at it, the only thing possibly available is cutting out the beautification thing. And Mark, I don't care if there's no water. There never was any water on the median, I think is what you're talking about, or even on the side of the road. It's just something that we didn't have for years and years. And now we have something beautiful and nice we want to hang on to with both hands. But maybe there's a priority system here that we can't do that. And maybe, the idea of maybe mowing the berms would be enough. And maybe, sorry to say, you hire guys in the summer, maybe a couple of those guys can do that work. I don't know. I'm reaching for straws here, and I'm running out of straws. So. What else do we need to talk about?
Well, right now we still have an open motion, so we can table it, or you could withdraw the motion, and we can go on to
I wouldn't withdraw it.
table it.
Yeah, well, that's a colleague's call, but,
Yes.
yeah, don't make it go away. I mean, it's gotta be there somewhere. Gotta stay somewhere. This is a live topic. It's not a yes or no or either or.
Well, I thought the purpose of today's meeting was really just to recap and kind of talk about what our options are and whatnot. So I guess, I don't know what you need from us, Karen. Like, if you want a motion that we want to present, if I got to give you a number right now, I'm going to say $200,000 is what we would like to propose to council. For consideration, and if that.
All right, hold on a second. Sherry,
Yes.
what can we do, if we get this approval, where would the money come from? And there would be a payback, let's say an accrued amount after 9 months, they start paying back. The stuff I've talked to you about before. Where do we get the money?
Well, if the 200 is allocated to the 6 hotels at whatever amount that they are able to borrow, the money would have to come directly back from each hotel in the amount of money that they pull down.
Through room tax, you mean?
Yeah, to any money that you get that you would have paid.
It would be through additional, not the hotel tax that would normally be coming in. This would be a separate loan.
And I'm not sure, again, the attorneys have cautioned us, I'm sorry, but, and I hope, John O'Driscoll, are you on the line? All right, he is not.
He's not.
Oh, he's coming in for the regular meeting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, attorney, we just lost Kevin. on Friday. He went to bigger and better things, not Tacovas. I would table it for future discussion, for the next meeting's discussion. We can have a meeting anytime. We don't have to have it exactly on Monday the 3rd or the 4th week type thing. So I would do that. You attend the meeting, and you should request, where do they fill out their form? Maybe Peter's on the line, to request to speak. How do we get that function
I don't
done?
think it's, I think, Peter will be managing when people get on it, there's gonna be a public comment part of this.
Oh.
I have a question, Sherry. Would we be able to defer, like, going forward, like, some of our allocations and things like that, our grants, in order to pay back these numbers as opposed to it being something that the hotels would have to pay?
Yes, I mean, the tourism board can, just like we were saying, the beautification expenses would be lower. They wouldn't be 15%, they would be 7%. You can also say our grant disbursements instead of 42.5 will be X, and the differential will be used to remit back to the city. Currently,
Sherry,
none of that's in place.
So Sherry, if we took that angle, what does that look like? So let's just talk this out real quick. So let's say we do a $200,000 loan to the hotels, all hotels, not just us, all hotels in the district, based on your allocation percentages, like when you gave us the 2020 fiscal year numbers, you know how you have that percentage by hotel, or you know how you have a breakdown, like how that gets split, you know what I mean? Like each hotel percentages based on how they put into the pot, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
What if we did that? What if we said that what we're asking for is $200,000 to get split out amongst the percentages you already have allocated based on your numbers, and then we forego our future grant reimbursements to pay off that $200,000. So basically, all of our grant submissions go against that $200,000 until that's cleared. And when that's cleared, then we resume back to normal operation. I'd be very open to that. Is basically what you're doing is you're advancing future grant money, but we're still paying it back in the same fashion. So it's kind of like we're putting in and pulling out. Does that make this more of a palatable discussion? And Mr. Mayor, your thoughts?
Well, I like it. One of the first things we're gonna hear is, the city has no money. And I talked to 3 people, and they all say we're going broke. I talked to Sherry. Sherry tells me we're in pretty good shape. I don't know where to turn with the answer for that. In other words, we may very well hear we don't have $200,000 to lend out or give out or whatever it is. So Sherry, you're going to have to try to help me with that a little bit. I'm not asking you to support the first or the second possibility, because that's the first thing I heard. And then, what about all the other businesses? How can we just make this work for the hotels and not everybody else in town? That's the restaurants, for example, that have problems. So that's the kind of thing that's going to happen. As far as what you're asking for or suggesting, Jason, is I like it. It's a form of security, collateral, if you will, of at the moment non-existent existing money. But nobody is going to go ahead and borrow $200,000. Nobody's going to give $200,000 available if we all think we're going broke. You won't be here tomorrow. That shouldn't be the thought process. So.
And Mr. Mayor, that's an easy way too, because if you're talking to restaurants and bars and other restaurants, we're taking out of the pot we put into. So it's not like it's like a circle of our funds. Does that make sense?
And just looking at, and for some reason, I don't have the percentage breakdown and everything, but I know it's very similar. So this is going to be off a few dollars. But for calendar year 1920, per quarter, we were allocating out around $67,000 in
Yeah.
grants. So that 200,000 is paid back in almost 4 months, or 4 quarters.
4 quarters.
You know, for basically, it's less, a little bit less, so it would be paid back within the calendar year, the fiscal year of 2021.
Well, right, Holly, because your hotel grants budget is 267 for fiscal 20, and fiscal 21 is 264,700. So that is the number. If you forego the disbursements, then that's the annual number, 264,700 is for fiscal 21.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, would the attorneys be more inclined to that since it's coming out of the same pot?
Well, the answer is twofold. One, if it's illegal, they're not gonna play the game. If it's up to the council, then they do what the council tells them to do.
Yeah,
The risk there from the city's perspective, I guess, would only be that money that is used for distributions is based on money coming in. So the 6 hotels who draw money would need to still be paying in throughout the rest of this year. Should any not survive this downturn, then that's going to be a risk to the city of where that money is going to come from if the
Well, wait a
remittances
minute,
don't
it
follow.
would not exist in, Sherry, would not exist in hotels. It would, more of a portion would come from the hotels that are alive.
Right, I'm just saying the ones, as the money is drawn from all 6 hotels, that would be just a question out there.
Yeah, but I mean, the percentage of the return would be, you know, the money received would be less, and the money that the remaining hotels would have to pay would have to increase to make up for the ones that aren't in business anymore.
And I look at it as an investment too. It's an investment from the city in the people that are returning the revenue to the fund. You know what I mean? Like, we're the ones putting into the fund. So with
Yep.
no hotels, there's no fund. But it's kind of
Right.
the investment in the entities that are putting into the fund.
All right, we're gonna have to adjourn this one way or another. I would suggest you make a table motion for future discussion with no firm date as to when, but with future discussion. And let's move on to the next meeting. So we need a motion to that effect. Defer the issue of, whatever the number is on that piece of paper there.
All right,
Go ahead.
so I'll motion, I guess we would table A, B, and C of new business for further discussion.
Okay, omnibus motion to table A, B, and C, and that's the, any second?
I'll second.
Okay, and then,
You have a motion, you have a second, we had a discussion. This is a money process. I always like to have a voice vote rather than an omnibus, so. Roll call,
Algauer, sir, aye.
Hager, aye.
Helmer, aye.
Schulteis, aye.
Motion passes 4-0. So let's go from there, stay on the line. You have a new number to dial in.
Yeah.
Sir, unfortunately, you can't stay on the line. It's a completely different meeting. So I'm going to end this meeting and then just use the credentials to log into the special city council meeting.
So as I was starting to say,
Okay. All right, well,
that's what will happen.
okay.
Thank you.
Do you like to adjourn? I'll motion to adjourn,
I'll second.
and all in favor? Aye.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks.